If you've ever read the Old Testament and you've read Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, or Deuteronomy, but more specifically the book of Exodus, you will realize that the main overarching narrative of the book of Exodus is about God delivering the Israelites out of slavery. The one main idea of the book of Exodus and then into Leviticus, Numbers, and all the way to Deuteronomy is about God raising up Moses as a result of the Israelites crying out for 400 years of pain from oppression, slavery, and injustice. And God raises up Moses to set the Israelites free. And when you read this, it's as if the entire narrative is about getting the Hebrews out of Egypt. But when you read it closely, you actually realize there's a deeper meaning and a deeper message than simply getting the Israelites out of Egypt. Upon closer reading, it's actually about getting Egypt out of the Israelites. It's not just about their external circumstances changing. It's not just about getting out of slavery. It's more about getting free from their inward, interior slavery from their old ways of living. So when you read the book of Exodus over and over, you will actually find the Israelites complaining, especially when things get difficult, especially when they feel stuck, especially when they're not sure what's going to happen next. They will actually complain to Moses and say, "Take us back to Egypt." So even though it seems like it's about getting the Israelites out of Egypt, it's more about getting Egypt out of them. In Numbers 14, verses 1 through 4, years into the wilderness journey, Joshua and Caleb come back from spying in the land of Canaan, and they tell the Israelites there's actually other armies occupying the promised land. There's actually other people. In fact, there are giants, descendants of Anak, Nephilims, huge warriors who are occupying the land that God has promised us. And this is what the Israelites say. Then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, "Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or that we would have died in the wilderness." They're like, this is right before they get into the promised land. "Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt?" And they said to one another, "Let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt." Why did the Israelites want to go back to Egypt? Because even though they themselves were no longer in Egypt, Egypt was still inside of them. They were outwardly free, but inwardly enslaved to their old ways of living, their old patterns, and their old coping mechanisms. No matter how much our external circumstances change, unless we get Egypt out of us, we will repeat the patterns of the past. And unless we embark on a deeper journey, we will find ourselves in similar, if not same, situations as before. That's why you will find people, drama follows them. I think it was 50 Cent that used to say, "I don't go looking for drama, but drama finds me." You know what I'm saying? They go from one community and say, "Yo, there's too much drama here." And they go to another church. And before they know it, drama follows them because Egypt is still inside of them. Some people, they say, "I hate this job, I need another job." And they go to a new career, and within 6 months, drama, they get let go. Let's get a little more personal. Some people, they can't help but go into toxic relationships. They go like, man, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, they got issues, or my first husband, he needs therapy. And the next thing you know, they go into another relationship, but because they're still inwardly enslaved, because Egypt is still inside of them, no matter how many new relationships, second or third marriage, they find themselves in the same place as before. I've definitely been there myself. So for the month of January, we are starting a new series titled The Deeper Journey. And for today, the title of my message is Interior Freedom. For those of you guys, if it's your first time here or you've never heard me say this, the actual vision of Beloved Church is to be a multiplying transformation center. Our goal is not necessarily to transform cities or regions, but our ultimate goal is to see people transformed. That we ourselves will be transformed and be a transformation center, and as a result, become agents of transformation wherever you are. But we all know this, unless you go deeper, we will be shallow Christians swimming in the kiddie pool. You'll be swimming where you were just 10 years ago, and you'll be going in the wilderness in circles and circles unless you go on the deeper journey. Most of us here, given that it's a new year, we have resolutions. We probably actually know what to do. We know what's right and wrong. But reality is, it is so hard to change. I'm not just talking about changing your body. As hard as that is, I'm talking about changing your character. I'm not talking about changing your diet. I'm talking about interior freedom from the inside out, that despite external circumstances, you have an inner freedom that comes from Christ. So today I want to ask and answer two questions. Oh man, it feels good being on stage. I know that sounds weird, but I haven't preached in 5 weeks. Come on, Jesus. I feel full of God's word. I want to answer two questions from Israel's journey out of Egypt. Number one, what is hindering us from experiencing a deeper interior freedom that results in lasting change? And number two, how can we begin, and for those of us who have, or continue in our journey of interior freedom? What's hindering us from experiencing deeper interior freedom that results in lasting change? There's one overarching thing I want to say today. The reason why it is so difficult to go deeper in the journey of interior freedom is because we are swimming against the currents of our past. Have you guys ever tried to swim against the currents in a river or a lake or the ocean? I went paddleboarding recently with one of my mentors. He's in his 60s. He says, hey, Will, you want to go paddleboarding? I was like, paddleboarding? I was like, yo, I'm stronger than paddleboarding. So let's go paddleboarding. So we went to Costa Mesa, went on the waters, a little lake, and I was just cruising. And all of a sudden, he's in front of me and says, hey, we're coming against a stream. We're coming against a tide. It's gonna be hard. I was like, yo, Larry, I got this. I know you in your 60s, but I'm still in my 30s. But Larry's kind of jacked. The stream starts coming against me, and I was just in the same place for like 10 minutes. He's like, bro, you gotta swim against the currents and go diagonally. Trying to experience true inner freedom and lasting change, it feels like you're going against the currents, or it feels like you're running on a treadmill. No matter how fast, no matter how hard, you feel like you're not getting anywhere. Why? Because your past is affecting your present more than you can possibly imagine. Oftentimes, our reactions and our actions in our current situations are merely echoes of things that have been done to us from the past. Our real-time decisions and reflexes are vibrations from the hurts and the traumas of what was done to us years ago. Ruth Barton, one of my favorite authors, in her book, Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership, this is what she says about how your past affects your present. While there may be dynamics in our current situation that trigger such reflexive reactions, most often our reactions are more connected to the past than to what is actually going on in the present or what is called for in our current situation. Such reactions are not reflections of our true self in God, the person that God has created us to be and is creating us to become. Along their journey, they keep wanting to go back to Egypt. And God sends Moses into the mountain for 40 days, and he begins to give them the Torah, or the 10 Commandments. And God begins to give on tablets the word of God to Moses. And in Exodus 20, God says something fascinating about how there are such things as generational blessings and generational curses. And we're going to take a moment and talk about our families of origins. Exodus 20, verses 5 through 6, this is what God tells Moses. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. And when it says a jealous God, he's not jealous of us, okay? He's jealous for you because he loves you, amen? I am jealous for my wife. When I see some guys talking to her a little more than they should, when we're driving home, I say, honey, you got your ring on? God is jealous for us because he loves us. But look what it says here, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commands. The first thing I want to acknowledge is this. Our parents have tried their best. Come on, somebody. They did what they could, especially for those of you guys who are minorities or immigrants. They left countries, they left certain situations, they left certain zip codes because they wanted to give you a generational blessing. And as hard as it was for them, their parents, your grandparents also did their best. So God says there are such things as generational blessings. But interestingly enough, God says that he punishes the sins of the father to the sons and daughters 2 to 3 generations to come. But if you read Deuteronomy 24, the scriptures also say, fathers shall not be put to death for their children, nor children be put to death for their fathers. For each is responsible for their own sins. So what's going on here? So are we responsible or are we not responsible? Are there such things as generational curses where God literally curses you? When I was reading some commentators, this is what most commentators had to say about this passage. They say it is more accurately translated to say the sins of the fathers tend to be repeated to the third and fourth generation. The sins of your mother and the sins of your grandfather tends to be repeated to the third and fourth generation. Even sociologists and psychologists and therapists, they say, you look at alcoholism, for some odd reason, it goes down through the generations because it tends to be repeated. You see, women who are attracted to toxic men is because their mother might have been attracted to a toxic man, and it tends to be repeated. And what I'm trying to say is, unless we can identify how we are swimming against the currents of our past, experiencing interior freedom will feel like we're swimming against the currents. This is what I'm trying to say. Jesus may be in your heart, but your childhood is in your bones. Jesus may be in your heart, but your parents' voice or the absence of their voice is in your head. Jesus may be in your heart, but that past relationship is still on replay in your soul. Jesus may be in your heart, but your hurts, your pain, and your traumas are still in your body. And until you realize that your past is affecting your present, it will feel like an uphill battle or running on the treadmill without any clarity of how to move forward in my journey of transformation. A few days ago, I noticed a new, what would I call this? A new behavior that my 4-year-old daughter picked up. And this is what she does. As my wife is talking to Karis finishes her sentence and says, I know, and just starts walking away. I was like, we gotta fast now. Forget puberty, talk about 4-year-old girl, we need to pray. And my wife is trying to tell her something, and she goes, Mama, I know. And then recently she went like this, la, and I was like, oh. So I had to step in. So I stepped in, I said, Beryl, you can't do that to mommy. I was like, I don't know if you learned that from Bluey on Disney, but that's Bluey's family, not the Chung family. I don't know if that was on Coco Melon, but we're the Chung family, not the Melon family, okay? And all of a sudden, she just, it's what she does. When my wife is, and she walks away, and then this is what happened. I disciplined her, I talked to her, she starts crying, and we figured it out, and now she was like, oh, Daddy, I'm trying. 2 days ago, we're running late to go to daycare to drop off our kids. And my wife asked me, can you put the kids in the car? But that's normally her household chore as a husband and wife. And I looked at her and I said, honey, is this a one-time thing just today? Or did something change in our marriage dynamics where I need to do this every morning? And instead of, I was just looking for a yes or no, but my wife wanted to have a dialogue. So she was like, oh, honey, it's because, honey, it's okay. I just need to know it's a yes or no. I didn't even realize I did that. And my wife's been so accustomed to my bad behavior, she didn't even realize I did that. And as I'm walking out, my daughter walks up to me and says, hey, Daddy, you can't cut mommy off while she's talking. Yo, why are you clapping, fam? I'm saying, woo! I was like, wait, what? Because I didn't think I did anything wrong. She's like, Daddy, that's not nice. Mommy was still talking. You need to let her finish. And I was like, oh my, it wasn't Bluey. It wasn't Coco Melon. She picked this up from me. At 4 years old, she's picking up patterns, belief systems, meaning that I can cut you off in mid-sentence. And now if she's not careful and she becomes a young adult and she starts cutting off her child, she starts cutting off her future husband, she starts cutting off her employees, she starts cutting off her boss, it's gonna be a long road for her. Why am I saying this? If you don't identify some of the patterns of your past that are so internalized into your way of being, interior freedom is extremely difficult to live out. All right, let's do it. Hannah, let's put that graphic behind me. 10 commandments, unbiblical commandments of family. I know this is a lot. I was like, should I even do this? I'll just do it really quick. This is from Peter Scarsoro's book, Emotionally Healthy Relationships. He says here, there's 10 commandments in family. Money is the best source of security. The more money you have, the more important you are. Make a lot of money to prove it that you made it. That's a narrative in your family. Conflict. Avoid conflict at all costs. Don't get mad at people or be loud and angry. Constant fighting is normal. Sex is not to be spoken openly about. Men can be promiscuous. Women must be chaste. Grief and loss. Sadness is a sign of weakness. You are not allowed to be depressed. Get over losses quickly and move on. Expressing anger. Anger is dangerous and bad. Explode in anger to make a point. Sarcasm is an acceptable way to release anger. You owe your parents for all that they've done for you. Don't speak of your family's dirty laundry in public. Duty to family and culture comes before everything. You have a dream, your parents say, nah, you're gonna be an accountant. Forget my dreams. Relationships, don't trust people, they will let you down. Don't ever let anyone hurt you. Don't show vulnerability. I was taught leaders have to be strong. It was only in the last 4 years I've been on a journey of vulnerability. Attitudes towards other cultures, only be friends with people who are like you or look like you or vote like you. Do not marry a person from another race or culture. Certain cultural races are not as good as ours. Success is getting into the best schools, making lots of money, is getting married and having children. You are not allowed to have certain feelings. Your feelings are not important. Reacting with your feelings without thinking is okay. Some of you are reading this like, oh yeah, that's right. No, it's not. Because in your family, it's like, you got to marry a rich guy. You got to marry a guy with 6 figures. So when you meet a guy who's such a good man, he's on his journey, but just because he don't got a 6 figure, you disregard them. There are these principles who have been spoken or unspoken that have been ingrained into our formation and discipleship from our family of origin. Can you identify how some of these realities are being lived out in your life? There's another thing I wanted to talk about regarding why it's hard to experience interior freedom, and I'll just do this quickly. The second reason is this: we are using a broken formula for interior freedom and lasting change. This is how most of us think freedom and transformation works. Information plus inspiration plus willpower equals change. That's why we're here on Sunday, right? You're taking notes. Oh man, I'm gonna be free. And you leave and you get into a fight with your roommate. You're like, hey, Pastor Will, give me some good Bible knowledge and inspire me. Get Danny up there to play the keys. And then tell me to just willfully change. And we all know how long this lasts. It lasts as long as when you fight with your wife, okay? Or you fight with your roommate or your coworker. For those of you guys who are more charismatic, spirit-led, let's just change inspiration to encounter. Information plus encounter. You prayed in tongues. You got a prophetic word. You got a vision. Plus willpower equals change. And when you try this formula, what does this lead to? You lead to trying harder to live up to God's commands. And we all know what happens when we do this. You fail and you call it brokenness and rely on God's forgiveness. So instead of discipleship and formation, we're just like, God forgave me. I went clubbing yesterday, but God forgave me today. I got high yesterday, but God forgave me today. I cussed out my wife, but God forgives me today. Which is true, but that's not what he's called you into. He's called you to love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. He called you to be a victor and not a victim. He called you to freedom and not slavery. And you succeed at it temporarily for some of you. You succeed at temporary behavior modification, but fail at heart transformation. And this is why Paul says in Romans chapter 7, verses 15 through 16, I don't really understand myself. For I want to do what is right, but I don't. Instead, I do what I hate. But if I know what I'm doing is wrong, this shows that I agree that the law is good. And I know that nothing good lives in me, that is, in my false self or sinful nature or shadow side. I want to do what is right, but I can't. I want to do what is good, but I don't. I don't want to do what is wrong, but I do it anyway. Why? Because the human will has limitations. Dallas Willard says the human will is a lot like a muscle. It's indispensable to who you are and to get things done, but it also gets exhausted quickly. You could be Jack 3D up here benching 315, squatting 500. You work out for 1 hour, your muscles will be exhausted. You could be self-disciplined. You could listen to every single podcast and try to do every single self-help, but eventually, like the muscle, your will gets exhausted. And Dallas Willard says, if you think spirituality is about you trying harder, it is only a matter of time before you get discouraged and you give up. And he says, but there's one thing the will can do over and over. Surrender. He says it's as if the will was made for that. It's as if there's one thing that the will can do on repeat for infinity. It can surrender over and over and over again. When you don't know about your career, you can surrender that to God. When you don't know about your relationship status, you can surrender that to God. When you don't know about your anxiety and depression, you can surrender that to God. And he says, it is only when we surrender our will and our lives to God's love can we truly begin the journey of interior freedom, the deeper journey of lasting change. So how can we begin and or continue in maturity, deeper transformation? I have two things and we'll land this plane. It might just be one. Resolve to make union and intimacy with God the highest priority of your life. The journey of interior freedom begins when we realize that God himself is actually the deepest longing of our heart. Whether you're here and you consider yourself a Christian or not, there's a reason why some magnetic force pulled you here. Because the greatest longing of our hearts is actually to meet its creator. When having him, pleasing him, and obeying him at whatever cost becomes the greatest longing of your heart, interior freedom and lasting change is possible. Along their journey in Exodus, on occasion, Moses would go away for 40 days. He would pray, he would fast, he would forget about food intentionally and drink, and he would just be in God's presence. On one occasion, he's up there for so long that the Israelites start grumbling to Aaron and Miriam and say, we don't know when Moses is going to come back. We need to have a God like the neighboring gods. We can't have this prophet that talks about a God in the wind. We need a carved image, some factual proof. So they build a golden calf. And Moses comes back. And God tells Moses in Exodus 33, go up to the land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go up with you anymore. God's like, look, you keep denying me, you don't want me. You keep idolizing comfort, security. For us, whatever that may be, we idolize our marriages, even our own personal beliefs, whatever it is. And he says, if you want, I only go where I'm wanted. I'll let you go to the promised land. I'll let you get that job. I'll let you get that marriage. I'll let you get that baby. I'll let you find that new career. I'll let you get your portfolio. I'll let you, but I'm not going to go with you. I don't know, man. That sounds like a pretty good plan to me. If God's like, son, I'll buy you that house. Your job and your career, you'll be the greatest church in the world. But I'm not going to go with you. I might be like, oh, that's not a bad idea. But look what Moses says. Moses says in verse 12, Moses said to the Lord, see, you say to me, bring up this people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. Yet you have said, I know you by name, and you have also found favor in my sight. Now, God, therefore, if I have found favor in your sight, please show me your ways, that I may know you in order to find favor in your sight. Consider too that this nation is your people. Moses is saying, God, this is your job. This is your family. This is your money. This is your community. He's saying, these Israelites, they're not mine, they're yours. And he said, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. And Moses said, if your presence will not go with me, do not bring us up from here. For how shall it be known that I have found favor in your sight, I and your people? Is it not in your going with us so that we are distinct, I and your people, from every other people on the face of the earth? And the Lord said to Moses, this very thing that you have spoken, I will do for you. For you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name. And Moses said, show me your glory. You see, Moses was externally and internally free. While the Israelites still had Egypt inside of them, Moses already went through a 40-year wilderness before this in the land of Midian by himself. And this journey of interior freedom for Moses was this: God, I don't want the blessing. I want you. I don't want that relationship. I want you. And it feels like what we're saying is those things are bad. No, that's actually not what he's saying. What he's saying is this: I want the promised land, but I want you more. I want that job, but I want you more. And what Moses is saying is this: compared to my relationship and loving union with God, everything pales in comparison. This is why Apostle Paul talks about this inner contentment, where Apostle Paul says in Philippians 4, I have learned the secret of being content in every situation. Whether clothed or naked, hungry or well-fed, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It is only when having him becomes the priority and we resolve to make that a reality can we truly begin the journey of interior freedom. Look at this beautiful quote again by Ruth Barton about what happens when God becomes your highest priority. This is what she says in her book. Because we are experiencing ourselves to be deeply loved by God, we begin to recognize an inner freedom that is beyond what we ever thought possible. We can handle an enormous amount of success and failure without losing our identity. We can loosen our grip on things that we have been attached to: money, success, some way we had come to see ourselves or our relationships or our career, and we receive them as gifts without being overly identified with them because they do not define us anymore. We find that we are able to love others deeply and unconditionally because we have faced ourselves, the darkness and the light, and we have found ourselves unconditionally loved by God. And we are able to love and lead with abandonment and freedom because we have nothing to lose. At this point in Moses' life, he had already let go so many times. No land, no blessing, no promise can no longer define him because God became the priority. A few years ago, I went through what I wouldn't even call it a wilderness season. I'll call it like a dark night of the soul. I went through such a hard time that when I was meeting with my spiritual director, and she asked me this question as I was getting interviewed for a program. She literally said, what does your relationship with God feel like right now? And mind you, I'm a pastor. I was about to start this church. I looked at her, and all of a sudden tears started rolling down my eyes, and I said this to her: I feel like God's abandoned me. I couldn't believe I said that. Because I've always told people, God is with you. God will never leave you. I feel like God's abandoned me. At that season of my life, I was so caught up in my career. I was so caught up in my ministry that I made some few critical mistakes for a nonprofit that I was leading. It detoured our mission and our vision. And at that time, my staff, whom I've known for years, one by one, started pointing out all my issues. They're like, when you said this, it made me feel this way. When I was sharing my heart, and instead of hearing my pain, you try to find solutions, it made me feel a certain way. Simultaneously, I was impressing those furthest from me. I was hurting those closest, like my wife and my daughter and my staff, but I was simultaneously impressing people that don't know me. I was being invited to speak and travel and to keep up with my image. And when trying to be this whatever, I burned out and I was depressed and I was anxious. And I felt so distant from God. And I remember I went to this worship service. And this lady says, we're going to talk about Exodus 33 when Moses says, if your presence will not go, do not send us out there. I was so broken at this time. I was considering quitting ministry. I was thinking all these things. And I remember I was sitting in the back, and when this lady was unpacking how we get caught up in our careers, caught up in so many secondary things, we get enslaved to what people think of us. We get enslaved to what we have and don't have. And when she read that, if your presence will not go, I won't go either. And I sat there and I just started weeping. And I confessed to God and said, God, help me to want you more than anything again. And I remember that season, I was so confused. It felt like a storm. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. And I was like, God, help me to want you again. And I started sharing, God, I'm tired of leading. Became a pastor at 18. I'm tired of freaking Instagram. I'm tired of having all the answers. And I said, God, help me to just want you again. And I don't know what happened, but that day, I felt these shackles just coming off. This bondage going to sleep. I didn't have the answers to what to do for our church. I didn't have the answers to my anxiety and depression, but I had direction. And direction was prioritize me, son. And you'll begin the journey of interior freedom. And the last thing I'll say is this. As you prioritize union with God, practice what St. Ignatius calls active indifference. Can everyone here say active indifference? Active indifference is to get to a place where you are so secure in God's love, it does not matter the outcome of your life. You are so content and so secure in His sovereignty and in His goodness that there's something in your soul that says, whatever the outcome, I trust in God. Again, Peter Scazzero, in talking about Ignatius spirituality, about active indifference, this is what he says active indifference is. Ignatius taught that the degree to which we are open to any outcome or answer from God is the degree to which we are really ready to hear what God has to say. Let's just pause there real quick. Praise team, can you come up on stage? So many people are like, I want to know what God wants me to do. I want to know what God wants me to say. I want to know what decision to make. God will speak when you're ready to listen. If we are clutching or overly attached to one of the outcomes versus another, we won't hear God clearly. Our spiritual ears will be deafened by the racket of our disordered loves, fears, and attachments. In such a state, it is almost a foregone conclusion that we will confuse our will with God's will. Ignatius considered this state of indifference to be spiritual freedom. If we are truly free, he argued, we wouldn't worry about whether we are healthy or sick or rich or poor. Active indifference is to get to a place where you say, God, I want to be so secure in your love that I can hold everything else loosely. I want to be so secure in your sovereignty. Wherever the chips fall, I trust that you're guiding me. Doesn't mean that we don't have a say. It doesn't mean that we don't get our volition involved. It just means the posture of our heart is surrendered. And why can we do this? Because Jesus practiced active indifference by giving up his life for our life. It says in Luke 22, verse 42, Jesus is wrestling. Have you guys ever felt like you're wrestling with God? He's wrestling. I don't want to die for Thomas. He's going to doubt me. I don't want to die for Peter. He's going to deny me. I really don't want to die for Thomas. He's going to betray me. And I really don't want to die for Will, because Will is the most self-centered, egotistical narcissist. But this is what he prays. Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will. Jesus, active indifference. Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. Jesus practiced active indifference till the end, where he chooses, Father, if it is your will for me to die on the cross so that the punishment of sin and the payment of slavery could be made, I choose to give myself to you. Brothers and sisters, hear me when I say this. Transformation is a long journey, but Jesus did not die for you to be in bondage. I know sometimes it feels like an uphill battle. I know sometimes it's really hard. But Jesus died so that you and I can be free, internally free. Can we close our eyes this morning? Would you just invite the Holy Spirit to speak to you however he wants to speak to you? We're going to spend about 10 to maybe 15 minutes in response. But for those of you who want to go, feel free to do so. But we're going to respond in prayer. Is there something you're seeking interior freedom for? Or is there something that you've identified that you're swimming against from your past? Would you just bring that before the Lord and allow him to love you?